Our story begins in the cozy, yet often tense living room of Jake's parents' house. I'm Emma, a 30-year-old happily married to Jake, the love of my life, for 6 wonderful years. But as in many families, not everything is perfect. One Sunday afternoon, we were all gathered for lunch at Jake's parents' house. The room was filled with the usual chatter, the clinking of cutlery against plates, and the faint hum of the television in the background. Jake's parents, Martha and Henry, sat at the head of the table, while Jake and I sat opposite his brother Matt and his wife Sophie. Martha, Jake's mother, always had a way of making me feel a bit out of place. "Emma, dear, why don't you help me in the kitchen?" she would often say, even when there was little to help with. It was one of those small things that seemed innocent, but always made me feel like an outsider. On this particular day, the air was thick with Martha's praise for Sophie. "Sophie, this salad you've brought is just delightful. You must give me the recipe," Martha gushed, her voice filled with admiration. Sophie, ever the charmer, responded with a smile. "Oh, it's nothing, Martha. Just a little something I whipped up. I'm glad you like it." I tried to join in the conversation, offering, "I've also tried a new recipe for the dessert today. I hope everyone likes it." Martha glanced at me briefly, then turned her attention back to Sophie. "Sophie, you really have a knack for cooking. I remember that casserole you made last time. Simply delicious." Feeling a bit sidelined, I exchanged a look with Jake, who gave me a small, reassuring smile. He always understood these moments without needing words. The lunch continued, with Martha sharing stories about Sophie's recent accomplishments and barely acknowledging my presence. It was a familiar scene, one where I felt like I was on the outside looking in, no matter how hard I tried to be part of the family. As we cleared the table after the meal, Jake whispered to me, "Don't let it get to you. You know I appreciate everything you do." I nodded, trying to brush off the feeling of being undervalued. It was just another Sunday at Jake's family home, where praise was abundant for Sophie, and for me, it remained just out of reach. It was a typical Thursday evening at Martha's house, with family dinner in full swing. The atmosphere was lively, filled with the sounds of casual conversation and laughter. At the table, I sat quietly, observing Sophie as she skillfully navigated the conversation. Sophie, with her perfect hair and bright smile, turned to Martha and said, "Martha, you really outdid yourself with the dinner tonight. Everything tastes amazing." Martha, visibly pleased, replied, "Thank you, Sophie. It's always a pleasure to cook for you all." I chimed in, trying to be part of the conversation. "Yes, Martha, the chicken is really tender. What's your secret?" Martha gave a brief nod in my direction, but her attention quickly returned to Sophie. "Oh, it's just a little trick I learned over the years. You know, Sophie has been showing quite an interest in cooking lately. She's getting quite good at it." Sophie beamed at the compliment. "I've been trying, but I'm nowhere near as good as you, Martha. Maybe one day I'll get there." The conversation continued in this manner, with Sophie and Martha exchanging pleasantries and compliments. I couldn't help but feel a bit of frustration at how easily Sophie seemed to win Martha over. It was as if Sophie wore a mask of charm that endeared her to Martha, despite the occasional unkind word Sophie would let slip about Martha when she wasn't around. Later, I heard Sophie's voice talking to someone on the phone in the living room. "Oh, Martha is such a stupid chicken, always shaking over her pots. It's so funny." I was taken aback by the contrast in Sophie's attitude. In front of Martha, she was all praises, but behind her back, it was completely different. Trying to keep the conversation light, I said to Martha, "You really do put a lot of effort into these dinners. We all appreciate it." Martha smiled, but her thoughts were still with Sophie. "Thank you, Emma. But Sophie, she really understands the effort that goes into this. She appreciates it in her own way." I nodded, keeping my thoughts to myself. It was clear that Sophie's praise held more weight in Martha's eyes, and I couldn't help but wonder if Martha would ever see through the facade that Sophie so skillfully maintained. The next day, I found myself in a coffee shop with Sophie, hoping to have a frank conversation. The cafe was buzzing with the chatter of other customers and the aroma of fresh coffee. I sipped my latte, gathering my thoughts. "Sophie, can I talk to you about something?" I started, trying to sound as non-confrontational as possible. Sophie looked up from her coffee, a hint of curiosity in her eyes. Sure, Emma. What's up? I took a deep breath. It's about Martha. I feel like there's a lot of, well, let's say, unnecessary praise going on. I think it's important to be genuine with her. Sophie raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? I am genuine with her. I compliment her because she deserves it. I pressed on. I know, but I've also heard you say things that don't match what you tell her. It doesn't seem fair to her. Sophie's expression hardened slightly. Emma, I'm not sure what you've heard, but I think you're misunderstanding things. I have a lot of respect for Martha. The conversation felt like it was hitting a wall. I decided to be more direct. Sophie, I've heard you make fun of Martha when she's not around. It just doesn't seem right. Sophie's face turned into a polite smile, but her eyes were cold. Emma, I think you're reading too much into things. I would never disrespect Martha. Feeling a bit deflated, I decided not to push further. Okay, Sophie, I just wanted to share what I felt. Maybe I'm wrong. Sophie quickly changed the subject, and we spent the rest of our coffee time chatting about mundane things. But the unease lingered in my mind. I had hoped to make Sophie see the contradiction in her behavior, but it was clear that she wasn't going to acknowledge it. As we left the cafe, Sophie said in a light tone, "Thanks for the coffee and the chat, Emma. Let's do this again soon." I nodded. Sure, Sophie. Walking away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of disappointment. I had wanted to clear the air, but it seemed that Sophie was content with wearing her mask, and there was little I could do to change that. In the bustling heart of our small town, I met my friend Lisa at a quaint diner known for its home-style comfort food. The chatter of patrons and the clinking of cutlery filled the air, providing a familiar backdrop to our conversation. Lisa had an air of unease about her as we settled into our booth, her usually bright eyes clouded with concern. As we ordered our food, Lisa hesitated, her words carefully chosen. Emma, there's something I need to tell you, and I'm not sure how to say it. It's about Sophie. My heart sank a little. Anything about Sophie usually meant trouble. What's going on, Lisa? I asked, bracing myself. She sighed, looking down at her hands before meeting my eyes. I was at the gym yesterday, and I overheard Sophie talking with some friends. She was speaking about you, Emma, and it wasn't pleasant. A knot formed in my stomach. What did she say? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. Lisa fidgeted with her napkin. She called you some awful names, Emma. Stupid chicken. Fat fool. It was really mean-spirited. I'm so sorry. The words stung more than I expected. It wasn't just the names. It was the betrayal of trust, the duplicity of someone I had to see at family gatherings, someone who pretended to be amiable to my face. I can't believe she'd say such things, I replied, my voice a mix of shock and hurt. After all the times I've tried to be nice to her. Lisa reached across the table, her hand a comforting presence. I know you have, Emma, and that's why I thought you should know the truth. The conversation shifted as we tried to steer away from the unpleasant topic. But my mind was elsewhere, replaying every interaction with Sophie, seeing them now in a different light. The lunch passed in a blur, and before I knew it, we were saying our goodbyes. As I drove home, Sophie's words echoed in my mind. I felt a mix of emotions, anger at her deceit, hurt by her words, and confusion over why she would target me. But there was also a growing sense of clarity. Sophie's mask had slipped, and I could see her for who she truly was. In the following days, I found myself replaying the conversation with Lisa over and over in my head. Each time, a new wave of emotions washed over me. I confided in Jake, who was equally shocked and upset. He offered his support, suggesting we confront Sophie together. But I wasn't ready for that yet. I needed time to process and plan my next steps. I also started to notice the small, subtle ways Sophie manipulated conversations at family gatherings, how she skillfully turned the attention to herself, and how she would throw a sly glance my way when she thought no one was looking. It was as if she enjoyed having this secret, this power over me. But with each passing day, my resolve strengthened. I would not let Sophie's words define me. I would stand up for myself, but in my own way and in my own time. The realization that I had the strength to face this, to not let Sophie's pettiness affect me, was empowering. And so, with a newfound determination, I began to plan how I would address the situation. I didn't want a confrontation. I wanted resolution. I wanted to show Sophie that her words had no power over me, that I was stronger than her petty insults. It was time for me to take control of the narrative and turn a bitter discovery into a moment of personal growth. Thanksgiving was approaching, and this year, Sophie and Matt were hosting the family dinner. A few days before the event, Sophie called me. I could hear the faint sound of children playing in the background on her end. "Hey, Emma, I was wondering if you could help me out with Thanksgiving dinner? I'm a bit overwhelmed with the planning," Sophie said, her voice laced with a hint of stress. Despite the mixed feelings I had about her, I agreed. "Sure, Sophie. What do you need help with?" "Could you handle the turkey and maybe a dessert?" "That would be a huge help," she replied, sounding relieved. "All right, I can do that. I'll make my pumpkin pie too. Everyone seems to like it," I offered, trying to keep the conversation light. "Perfect. Thank you so much, Emma. You're a lifesaver," Sophie said cheerfully. On Thanksgiving Day, I arrived at Sophie's house early, armed with my prepped turkey and ingredients for the pumpkin pie. The house was already buzzing with the sounds of preparation. Sophie greeted me with a smile, ushering me into the kitchen. As I started to get busy with the cooking, Sophie flitted around, occasionally checking in but mostly leaving me to it. I poured my efforts into making sure everything was perfect. The turkey seasoned just right, the pie with its flaky crust. Guests began to arrive, and soon the house was filled with the noise of family catching up, the sound of children running around, and the ever-present hum of the football game on TV. Dinner was served, and everyone gathered around the table. The turkey was a hit, and the pumpkin pie was met with compliments. I noticed Martha praising Sophie. "This turkey is wonderful, Sophie. You've outdone yourself." Sophie basked in the praise, a triumphant smile on her face. "Thank you, Martha. I'm glad you like it." I kept my emotions in check, smiling politely while a plan formed in my mind. I knew I needed to act, but in a way that was subtle yet revealing. As we were enjoying our dessert, I saw my opportunity. "Sophie, this pumpkin pie is delicious. Can you share the recipe? I'd love to try making it myself." Sophie's face faltered for a moment, a flash of panic in her eyes. "Oh, it's just a standard recipe. Nothing special," she stammered. I pushed a little further, keeping my tone friendly. "But it tastes different from the usual. There must be a secret ingredient or something." Sophie stumbled over her words, trying to come up with a response. The room grew quiet, with family members now curious about the recipe. The discomfort was evident on Sophie's face as she struggled to respond. It was clear to everyone that she didn't have an answer. I let the moment hang for a bit before moving the conversation along, but the seed of doubt was planted. Sophie's facade had cracked, and I could tell that the family was starting to see what I had seen all along. As the Thanksgiving dinner progressed, the atmosphere was still charged from the earlier incident with the pumpkin pie. Sensing an opportunity to reveal more of Sophie's deceit, I decided to push the envelope further. While we were all relaxing in the living room, digesting the feast, I turned to Sophie with an innocent expression. "Sophie, the turkey was so good, especially the gravy. Could you share the recipe for the sauce? I'd love to try it myself." Sophie's face went pale, a clear sign of her discomfort. The sauce. Well, it's just a standard recipe, you know, the usual ingredients," she stammered, avoiding eye contact. Others in the room perked up, clearly intrigued. "Oh, but it tasted unique," said Aunt Mary, joining in. "What did you put in it, Sophie?" Sophie fidgeted, looking desperately for an out. "Well, you know, the usual, herbs and stuff." The guests exchanged knowing glances, the air filling with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. It was becoming evident to everyone that Sophie wasn't familiar with the recipe. Jake's brother Matt, noticing his wife's discomfort, stepped in. "Let's not bother Sophie with recipes right now. We're here to enjoy the holiday," he said, trying to deflect the situation. But the damage was done. The guests, one after another, playfully yet pointedly asked Sophie about the sauce, each question adding to her embarrassment. It was clear they were enjoying this unmasking of the cunning and hypocritical daughter-in-law. Sophie, now red-faced and visibly flustered, muttered a few more incoherent responses before excusing herself from the room. Matt followed her, casting a disapproving glance at the rest of us. The tension in the room was palpable after Sophie's abrupt exit, followed closely by Martha, who was clearly going to comfort her. The rest of us sat in a tense silence, waiting for their return. When Martha came back, she was visibly upset, her usually composed demeanor replaced by a fiery anger. Without hesitation, she directed her fury at me. "Emma, what you've done is disgraceful. You've embarrassed Sophie in front of the whole family." I was caught off guard by her intensity. Jake immediately stood up, ready to come to my defense, but I gently held his hand, signaling him to let me handle it. "Martha, I understand you're upset, but please hear me out," I began, trying to keep my voice calm. Martha cut me off, her words laced with accusation. "You're just jealous of Sophie. You think by embarrassing her, you can prove you're the better cook, the smarter one, the more beautiful one. This is petty revenge." I took a deep breath, maintaining my composure. "Martha, that's not it at all. The truth is, I prepared the turkey and the pie. Sophie took credit for them." Martha's face was a mix of disbelief and confusion. "Is that true?" Sophie, who had quietly returned, chimed in, her voice defensive. "No, that's not true. Emma's just trying to make me look bad." The tension escalated as Sophie tried to deflect the blame onto me. It was clear that words alone weren't going to resolve this. Knowing I needed to provide undeniable proof, I said, "I can prove that I made them." Everyone's attention was now focused on me, waiting for the evidence. I pulled out my phone and opened my photo gallery. Here are the pictures I took while preparing the dishes at home. I passed the phone around, showing the step-by-step process of me preparing the turkey and the pie. The pictures clearly showed the ingredients, the preparation, and the final products, all in my kitchen. As the phone made its way around the room, the realization dawned on everyone. Martha's anger slowly turned to embarrassment, and Sophie's defense crumbled under the weight of the evidence. Martha finally spoke, her voice softer. "Emma, I didn't know. I'm sorry for not believing you." And then Sophie revealed her true face. "You're a lying, envious woman. You're trying to break me up with Marta," she yelled at me. The tension in the room escalated. Sophie's accusations of deceit towards me had reached a boiling point. Sensing the need for undeniable proof, I decided to reveal the last piece of evidence I had reluctantly held back. "Everyone, there's something else you should hear," I said, my voice steady but filled with reluctance. I pulled out my phone again, this time to play a recording. This is a recording of Sophie talking about Martha and other family members. The room fell silent as I pressed play. Sophie's voice filled the air, her words harsh and unkind, speaking rudely about Martha and various relatives. The shock was immediate and palpable, especially on Martha's face, which drained of color. As the recording ended, a heavy silence hung over the room. Sophie sat frozen, her earlier facade completely shattered. Martha, deeply hurt and humiliated, struggled to find words. I had no idea," Martha finally whispered, her voice breaking. "How could you, Sophie?" Sophie, now on the verge of tears, stammered out an apology. "I'm so sorry, Martha. I didn't mean those things. I was just venting." But the damage was done. The family members looked on in shock, their expressions a mix of disbelief and disappointment. The realization of Sophie's hypocrisy hit everyone hard. Martha, shaking her head, said, "I can't believe I was so blind. All this time, you've been deceiving us." The room erupted into a chorus of upset voices as relatives expressed their feelings of betrayal and disappointment. The festive atmosphere of Thanksgiving had been completely replaced by a sense of betrayal and sadness. In the midst of the turmoil, I felt a mix of vindication and sadness. While it was important for the truth to come out, the damage it caused to the family dynamics was undeniable. As the evening came to a close, the family left in a somber mood. Martha, still in shock, quietly thanked me for bringing the truth to light, though it was clear she was deeply hurt. Sophie and Matt left quickly, the air between them tense. The fallout of the revelation was just beginning, and it was evident that the family would need time to heal from this. Jake and I left in a reflective mood, the events of the evening weighing heavily on our minds. As we drove home, I couldn't help but feel that, despite the painful unmasking, this was a necessary step towards healing and rebuilding trust within the family. The truth, however painful, was out in the open, paving the way for a more honest future.